Week 2 of the college football slate has already kicked off, but we have some big games beginning at noon. I hate the fact that this game is at noon. It's one of the more marquee matchups you'll ever find between two teams from separate conferences, huge brands in Michigan and Texas, the defending national champions versus the number 3 team in the country. I know you're big on Texas. This line is at 7. It was at 4.5. Some big line movement in favor of Texas after what we saw in week 1. What do you think about this game?
Yeah. Two of the biggest brands in college football. And you know, the last year you could maybe argue the two biggest brands right there with Georgia. Both college football playoff teams. Obviously, Michigan won the national championship team. And that Texas team is, you know, relatively the same. There's some pieces, you know, Xavier Worthy. We watched him do some unbelievable stuff last night on Thursday Night Football.
Swift, though.
Yeah,
they lost some big guys on the defensive line.
But the bones of that rock. Well, first of all, the quarterback is back, and the head coach is basically what I'm saying. Whereas Michigan is a completely different team. Obviously, that defense is still nasty. They got a couple of guys on that defense side of the ball. They're going to be top 10 picks. And you know, Sherrone Moore did a valiant job driving Jim Harbaugh's car in that Ohio State game. And I think he did a fine job in general last year in place of Jim Harbaugh with the suspension. I am just not a believer in this Michigan team that lost 17 or whatever guys last year to the NFL. Sherrone Moore's not coaching for a contract. That adds something. The actual investigation adds something. This Texas team also is aiming for something, you know, where like Michigan was last year. Michigan was so hungry. This year, it just feels like Michigan is just kind of like limping, you know, trying to figure out who they are. They don't really have a dad. They're, you know, wandering around. They're chickens with their heads cut off. And listen, they might play some good defense, but I am, you know, I think I'm going to start changing my tune on Quinn Ewers if he can, you know, pick apart this Michigan defense.
I couldn't disagree more on the motivating factors. I think everything that you said actually motivates Michigan. The fact that they aren't considered national title contenders by the national media outlets, despite being the reigning national champions.
I think most people have them in the playoff.
I don't know. No. And even still, no one is talking about Michigan repeating as national champions.
Yeah,
and also all the stuff, they used that as motivation last year, the Stallion stuff, and they're going to continue to use that as motivation. I don't know about Sherrone Moore.
Can't keep going to that well.
They're going to keep going to that well because it worked. And you're not going to go against something that worked last year. I think a lot of those things actually help Michigan. The fact that people are overlooking them, the fact that there's an investigation that really isn't going to impact the program at all, but they're going to use it as motivation. The fact is, though, I don't know if Michigan can score. Like, that's the biggest issue here, right? I think Michigan very easily, right there with Georgia, could have the best defense in the country. I mean, they've got absolute studs, top 5 picks are on that defensive line and in that secondary. And they looked fantastic against Fresno State, which is not an offense that is just, I know Fresno State is Fresno State, but it is not an offense that you're just going to shut out. It's not. And if you go out and shut out Fresno State, like, this is an elite level defense. This totals at 42.5 for a reason. And it's not because Texas has a bad offense. It's because Michigan's defense is that good. The question is, where does Michigan find points? Can they pound the rock against Texas? If they can pound the rock against Texas, I think they got a chance to win this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, you know, I think Michigan's going to be able to move the ball, and I don't think it's going to be exactly, you know, all over the yard, and vice versa, where I do think that Sark and Quinn Ewers is going to make this Michigan defense look a little bit susceptible or a little bit weaker than they, you know, are getting all this noise. I'm just not a believer in Michigan. You know, the sequel is rarely as good as the first movie, and it takes a special group of players and a special leader to do that. And I'm not just talking about a national championship. I'm just talking about, you know, at this point, what is a successful season to Michigan? A sequel is very difficult to do, and it's even harder to do without the star actor and the director. I mean, it's practically impossible to do.
And here's the other two things I think people are overlooking, and I've been saying this all year. I think Texas is is the most overrated team in the country.
Yeah, I'm
everyone is sitting here just like, oh, they beat Colorado State. They looked amazing. Like, and yeah, they looked good against Colorado State. Like,
but you said that about Fresno.
I didn't. I listen. I said Fresno State offensively they looked fantastic. Fresno State's a 10 times better. They will beat Colorado State by 5 touchdowns. Like that. They moved the football against Texas. I think there are real questions about Texas's defense. I think Michigan can stop Texas.
You've got strength on strength, and you've got weakness on weakness on both of these fronts. You know, immovable object, unstoppable force type stuff like that. And quite frankly, you know, in this day and age, very rarely do we see good. Those times, maybe you might be right. You might be right. But I think Michael Penix, you know, he's going to be a Hall of Famer for the Falcons, but he pissed his pants in that national championship. Missed wide open guys. You know
who he beat though.
Texas's defense might be, you know, Texas's defense is as bad as Michigan's offense. That's why I was saying in our lock show, I was thinking the over is the play. Like I just think good offense in today's college football beat good defense.
Listen, I'll say this.
There was a
guy on Twitter that said Texas won't score 10 points. I think
that's crazy.
That's
crazy.
I think they'll score 10 points. I do think Michigan's defense at home, and I think because Texas's defense has unanswered questions, I think they have a chance to make this a lot better game than I think. A lot of people are just like Texas is going to win. I would lean Texas winning this game because they have the better quarterback and they have better athletes.
Coach.
Better coach. Like I'm leaning towards Texas. I just think 7 points in the big house. That is a huge, huge spread.
Think about
the over 14-point game if you go to Texas. Like
I don't. Maybe not 14, but 10. I just think think of the overall goals of these two programs. Like Texas is where Michigan was last year, where they are the hunters. We're like, you know, Michigan this year they're just trying to survive. I really do think that. Like, I just think they're not aiming for anything.
I just have a hard time saying guys on that.
Remember that 2020 LSU team?
Yeah, but Coach O was on one, bro.
If Sharon Moore doesn't have a contract,
if we find out that Sharon Moore is out there flirting with like the boosters'
Michigan staffers
and has his girlfriends coming to practice while he's drunk or whatever it was.
Good to see you.
But I listen. I lean Texas in this game, but I would not be surprised if Michigan won. I think there's too many people just saying like, "Oh, this is going to be a wipeout." I think it's just going to be a good ass football game.
I do think it's going to be a good game, and I'm doing that thing where I like bet one way. That way, if I lose this bet, I am going to dogpile on Texas. I will
be the biggest Wolverine this weekend.
I mean, I don't really care. I obviously want to win money. I'd rather win money than, you know, be right per se. I guess I would be right. But, like, I have been all offseason saying Michigan sucks, and I think Texas is also overrated. So I don't really know what to do. I expect a nuclear explosion, and I have to pick a side.
I just think a lot of people were high on Texas, and for some reason they saw them play well against Colorado State, and that was, like, their affirmation. This will be their affirmation.
Like Tennessee beating the crap out of a JUCO team.
Yeah, Nico is
Nico.
He's going to be the Heisman, and Tennessee is going to win the national championship. It's like, guys, can we like hold that Alabama scored like 120 points this week against whatever Middle Tennessee State?
That's an omen. That's an omen.
But that's the thing. Alabama fans are now like, DeBoer is just like Saban, 63-0 against Western. Let's see it against a team that has a pulse.
This is a big week for both of these teams.
Will go to the NFL. And I'm interested to see, because I agree with what you're saying about Michigan, but I'm interested to see how they respond to all this adversity.